Let's talk about what just happened in this Senate exchange between Senator John Kennedy and Kash Patel.
Mr. Director, worry not. We'll make sure your agency is adequately funded. This judge you arrested in Wisconsin, she was breaking federal law, wasn't she?
Yes, that's why we arrested her.
She was helping an illegal immigrant escape being taken into custody. Is that right?
Yes, and the field agents decided to open the case, work the case.
And as Americans, do we get to pick and choose which laws we want to follow?
We do not.
If you're a state court judge, do you get to decide you don't want to follow federal law?
No.
And if you violate federal law, you get arrested, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
That's called equal treatment under the law, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. I think Ms. Page worked for Justice. The Inspector General found in its investigation that they hated President Trump and they really wanted Secretary Clinton to win. Is that true?
That's correct, sir.
And this would be the same same Ms. Page who sent an email to Mr. Strzok with whom she was having an affair. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Mr. Strzok with the FBI, senior official at the FBI replied, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Did I read that correctly?
You did, Senator.
Okay. Now, Ms. Page got quit before she could get fired. Mr. Strzok was fired. And predictably, they filed a lawsuit because in Washington, it's easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire a federal employee. Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
So the Attorney General decided to give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 after they were fired after actively interfering in the 2016 election. Is that right?
My understanding is that was a settlement they agreed to.
Pass me the sick bucket, please. The Hunter Biden laptop. In October of 2016, shortly before the election, the New York Post wrote a story that was widely covered talking about Mr. Hunter Biden's influence peddling scheme based on his laptop. A couple of weeks later, Secretary of State, soon to be Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, organized a group of 51 so-called intelligence experts. Had some real rock stars on the list. Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, and they said, oh, no, the story in the New York Post is not true. It's based on Russian disinformation. You remember that?
I do, Senator, as the lead investigator for Russiagate for the House Intel Committee.
Yeah. The FBI had the laptop for 10 months, hadn't they?
They did, Senator.
So the FBI knew right before the election that it wasn't Russian disinformation, didn't they?
And that was confirmed by the Inspector General's report.
Yeah. Who at the FBI refused to let the FBI tell the American people the truth?
I don't have that name in front of me, sir.
Well, would you look?
I will, sir.
I'd like to know. I'd like a name, not a division. I'd like the name. Person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. As you're well aware, DOJ.
I want to walk through this carefully, because this exchange is already being clipped, posted, and celebrated in certain corners of the internet as some kind of devastating takedown of the so-called deep state. And if you're not slowing it down and actually listening to what's being said, and what's being conveniently skipped, you might walk away with a completely distorted picture of how power, accountability, and justice actually work in this country. So let's break it down. Kennedy opens by framing the arrest of a Wisconsin judge as simple, clean, and obvious. She broke federal law. Period. End of story. But notice what's happening rhetorically. He's not asking whether prosecutorial discretion was exercised wisely. He's not asking whether arresting a sitting judge, rather than issuing a summons, was necessary. He's not asking whether this was consistent with how similar cases have been handled historically. Instead, he narrows the entire conversation to one question. Do Americans get to pick and choose which laws they follow? That sounds reasonable. It always does, but it's also misleading. Because the reality is that law enforcement picks and chooses every single day. Which cases get charged? Which ones get deferred? Which ones get quietly resolved? And which ones get made into public spectacles? And when Kennedy says, "That's called equal treatment under the law," what he's really doing is declaring the debate over, before anyone is allowed to examine whether the treatment was actually equal. Equal treatment isn't something you assert, it's something you prove. Then we pivot, hard, to Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. This part of the exchange is designed to provoke disgust, affairs, text messages, anti-Trump sentiment, and yes, those texts were inappropriate, unprofessional, embarrassing. But here, what Kennedy doesn't say. Federal employees, even deeply flawed ones, still have due process rights. Wrongful termination lawsuits aren't gifts. They're settlements based on legal risk. And the idea that settling a case automatically means the employee was morally vindicated is just not how labor law works. Kennedy mocks the settlements as corruption, but he doesn't acknowledge that conservative administrations settle these cases too. He doesn't mention that juries often side with employees when procedures aren't followed. And he certainly doesn't mention that workplace protections exist precisely to prevent political retaliation. You don't have to like Strzok or Page to understand that. And when Kennedy theatrically says, "Pass me the sick bucket," what he's doing is substituting performance for analysis. That might play well on cable news. It does nothing to clarify the truth. Now we get to the Hunter Biden laptop, a subject that Kennedy frames as the smoking gun of institutional betrayal. Yes, the FBI had the laptop. Yes, it was not Russian disinformation. Yes, intelligence officials signed a letter that turned out to be wrong. All of that is true. But here's the part that keeps getting left out. The letter did not claim definitive proof. It explicitly stated that the story had hallmarks of foreign disinformation. It was an opinion, not an intelligence assessment, and it was not an official FBI statement. Was it irresponsible? Possibly. Was it politically motivated? Arguably. But was it some centrally coordinated conspiracy to rig the election? That leap requires evidence Kennedy never presents, and never asks Patel to present either. Instead, he demands a name, one villain, one person with a brain and a beating heart. Because accountability theater works best when it has a face. The problem is, institutions don't usually fail because of one cartoonish bad actor. They fail because of incentives, culture, fear, and yes, politics on both sides. Then comes the Epstein question, the one guaranteed to go viral. Did he kill himself, or was he murdered? Patel gives the standard answer: suicide. He promises transparency. He cites victim protection and legal constraints. And look, people are understandably skeptical. Epstein represents elite impunity at its most grotesque. But notice the contradiction here. The same politicians who slash oversight budgets, the same voices who attack career investigators, the same people who undermine institutional trust, are suddenly outraged that institutions aren't transparent enough. You don't get to torch the system and then act shocked when the lights don't work. This wasn't a conversation about justice. It wasn't even a conversation about truth. It was a conversation about control of the narrative. Senator Kennedy wasn't trying to learn something from Kash Patel. He was trying to reinforce a story his audience already believes, that institutions only fail when Democrats are involved, that accountability only matters when it targets political enemies, that complexity is weakness and certainty is strength. But democracy doesn't survive on certainty. It survives on skepticism, especially skepticism of people who sound the most confident. I'm not here to defend the FBI as flawless. I'm not here to pretend intelligence agencies don't screw up. And I'm definitely not here to argue that power hasn't been abused. But I am here to say this. If accountability only runs in one direction, it's not accountability, it's propaganda. If outrage depends on who's in office, it's not principle, it's partisanship. And if every institutional failure is flattened into a campaign talking point, then the public never gets the reform it deserves, only the performance it's been trained to applaud. Real oversight is boring. It's methodical. It doesn't come with punchlines or sick buckets, and it doesn't fit neatly into a viral clip. But it's the only thing that actually makes institutions better instead of just louder. And that's the part of this exchange that no one yelling on social media wants to talk about. If you found this breakdown useful, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Tell me whether you think this was real accountability or just another round of political theater.